This one has some issues, but what a fascinating premise for a world. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we are going to be talking about Eluthienn, A Tale of the Fromryr by Sam Middleton. And this one is not quite what I expected because I knew this was going to be a bit more sci-fantasy, but I was expecting more on the sci-fi side. This is very much like a fantasy book that's just set in kind of a sci-fi setting. And I think the setting is what's super interesting because this is set where like it takes place in a whole place that's like underground, and we have Fromryr. So here's a quick look at the map here, where there are like these whole big underground caverns, and then otherwise these tunnels, and there are spaceships that they fly through here, but also it's just like it's this whole civilization underground, which is humans, elves, dwarves, gnomes, and then there's these other like creatures called the Merovingian, which are their enemies that they've been fighting that also are here. And so it's this whole kind of thing set up here. And then the twist is all of these people, they've kind of just moved into this area that was created or maintained and has the technology of an older race. And so that's where you have the spaceships, which I guess they're not really flying in space technically because they're underground in the tunnels, but like the ships, like the sci-fi type ships, and all of this different type of technology, a lot of it which has more of a like fantastical feel, even though it's very much technology. And so really interesting with kind of that setup. Although it's definitely, like I said, feels much more fantasy. I was expecting a little bit more of the sci-fi elements with this one for sure. So we follow two different POVs here. The first is Leander, who is an exorcist, and that's kind of the thing. We have like a church set up. There's exorcists, there's witch hunters, and that type of thing as well. And he is a disgraced former first champion, so had a really high rank, and now is pretty lowly. We start above the surface with him too as well, but he finds something really mysterious going on and makes a discovery about that's happening when he's investigating like a weird happenings in this town, and that potentially is going to change a lot of things as are known by the church and have these really big consequences. Then the other POV is Brazier, who is a dwarf on a ship, and that's taking place all on the underground and like the tunnels and everything. After something tragic happens and he loses his brother who was captain, he's kind of trying to figure things out and step in and take over crew and go that route as well while dealing with all these things. So those are kind of our two ones. The other piece of the premise is this is the story that's being told specifically to relate events about Eluthienn, who is a outlawed prince he's been like exiled. And this is being told to another third party, and that's sort of the setup, is that the story is being told here. And so part of it you do get like, there's the potential for we don't know how reliable the narrative is, that kind of thing, although we're following these two different stories, and there's a ton of different little pieces. And overall, the big thing that did pull me in is I think the world is really fascinating. And I'm a world building focused reader, so that was enough to keep me really invested and curious. Although I feel like some of the other bits of the execution weren't all that could be desired, or left a little bit to be desired, because the pacing, which I think, well, I'll talk about the pacing. The pacing is very quick. This is not a huge book at all. It's a lot happens. There's a lot here. There's a ton of world building, but we're not stopping. We're not doing info dumps. We're kind of just figuring these things out as we go along, and we're not spending a lot of time dwelling into it, whether it's the history, how the weird technology works. We're just kind of moving along and getting it going there. I think it's one of those things where like I would have liked to probably slow down a little bit and really dig in more, focus a little bit more on the world building personally, for my preference and my kind of taste. But also, I applaud the author for not making this a 700-page book where we do just that and end up doing a little too much, because it's kind of hard with some premises like this. It's hard to know, am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? And so I think it works, but we do kind of, we gloss over some things, and that's where like plot-wise and character-wise, we gloss over some things. We move very, very quickly, and so I think the characters start off feeling pretty shallow, and they start to get, like, the further you get in, you get more built there, but it took me a little bit to really get into that because we're just moving really quickly. And this is the kind of book where you have to just kind of look past some of the plot plot things that are just sort of happening or moving very, very quickly. There's not always like a ton of reason, but also that goes to, is maybe some of this is literally being glossed over because of the narrative structure where this is being told to somebody. So maybe that's also partially why. So it's one of those things where I can't super like fault it, but things move a little bit too quickly, I think, and are glossed over a little bit too much in some cases. But also we're trying to cram quite a lot of things happening here. And we have, like I said, the different races. We have this sort of like magic and science all kind of mixed together. The descriptions of a lot of like the technology are super interesting. Like there's a thing called an epistolar message where you like wade into this black murky liquid and can send these messages, but you have to say it in a really specific way, like the messenger is this and this is the recipient and no other. Like there's a whole like way you have to do it. So I think it's really interesting because you're taking these like technology things and kind of it's the old like like the I can't remember if it was a Marvelism or whatever, but the like science when it progresses far enough is magic, or that kind of thing. So it has that sort of the feel where we're dealing with this like advanced technology to the degree that it feels like magic. And so it's very interesting. And all of like the different things, like the ships are made of something called bronzite, and they run off this like ice that creates energy, and we find out little bits about that. And there's just all of these things. But the one thing that, like I said, I think comes up with a little bit of the moving quickly and then not as much explanation is there are a lot of times where something happens and a character's like, oh my gosh, how do you know how to do that? Or how is this possible? But as the reader, it's not been established enough that what they're doing is out of the norm or like should be impossible because we're moving pretty quickly. So, when they're like, how are they even doing this? It's just like, I don't know. I didn't know that they couldn't do that. So like, it doesn't really have the weight of being like this amazing or surprising thing that's happening because there just hasn't been quite enough done to set up there. And this is realizing that, again, if you took hundreds of pages of doing all the setup, I'd probably be coming off the other side saying we spent too much time in it. So it is hard to have that balance, but I think a little bit more of that explanation, fleshing things out a little bit more could have worked, and maybe just slowing down some of the narrative because we're doing quite a lot here. But I think the base here is really strong, and there's a lot of really fascinating things. And like I said, just the general idea of this world that's being set up, all of the different pieces and things that I'm really curious to see where this goes next. So it's a book that I was invested in. I was enjoying throughout, even though I had some complaints and some issues with some of the way things were happening. And so it's done enough though to keep my interest and have me be curious what more is going to happen in this world. And it's just super, super interesting with that type of setup. So I think if you're looking for unique fantasy with some sci-fi elements, like I said, I really would put this more fantasy with a kind of a sci-fi setting, more than sci fantasy straight up that way. But really interesting stuff. And really, if you're looking for something that's just unique, super different, and doing a lot of interesting things, I think this is a good one to pick up and to check out. I did the physical copy. I think this was on Kindle Unlimited, I believe, as well. So easy way to check out. But really, really unique and interesting reading experience here with it. And so I'm curious to see what more we're going to be doing in this world. So I'll definitely be having my eye out for what comes next here. That's really it for this one, though. So let me know your thoughts if you've heard of this one, or if this sounds interesting to you. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.